These are just a few examples of the types of fresh fruit and vegetables that we feed our rats on a daily basis. There's a couple of things I just wanted to remind you about, and that's always to test new foods by giving a tiny amount early in the day and wait 24 hours for any possible reaction before you give a bigger piece of the food. Always change your rat's diet gradually to avoid stomach upsets and also to avoid stressing your rats. And just remember that rats can't burp or be sick, so be careful what you feed them. Now when we're testing a new food, if it was for a young rat, we'd just give a tiny little piece like this. If it was a fully grown rat, we'd give a little slice of the food. And you'll notice rats sniff food very carefully before they actually try a new food. Once we've established that the food doesn't make the rats unwell, this is the size we would give a baby rat, it's a 1 centimetre piece, and we would gradually increase the size as the rat grows until they're having a 2 centimetre piece of fresh fruit and vegetables every day. Now, I just wanted to point out with broccoli, it's one of those foods that causes a lot of wind, so I wouldn't give anything larger than that for rats, even once they've tested it on them, because it can make rats quite uncomfortable. So we don't give broccoli too often, and we don't give too much of it. So some foods are safe to give raw. I'm just going to mention before that, we always try and buy organic. I always give as fresh as possible. Don't give any food that's started to get a bit squishy, and definitely nothing that's mouldy. With most things like cucumber, carrots and the apples, we would wash and peel, and with the other vegetables we wash very thoroughly under cold running water. So some foods that we give raw: apples and pears. We will be avoiding the pips and the cores with those. Berries, strawberries, raspberries, blueberries and tayberries are all very popular. Cherries, we do remove the stone for them. A chunk of melon, especially watermelon. Some rats do like plums, ours are not over keen on plums. Carrot, always very popular. Broccoli in small quantities. Tomatoes, especially cherry tomatoes, but we would always cut those in half for the rats, because I think they're easier for them to eat. Celery, some of our rats like, oh golly, I've forgotten what they're called now, courgettes. Some of them will eat courgettes and some of them hate courgettes. Corn on the cob, we always buy fresh, not the pre-packed, because that sometimes has preservatives in it. Baby corn on the cob is one of the rats' favourite, definitely. And cucumber, very good for sick rats, or to put in the travel carrier for giving some moisture if you can't attach a water bottle and you're just popping out down to the vets for an hour. Cut off the peel and cut off a few chunks of cucumber, sort of 2 centimetre squares, and that will keep your rats hydrated. And gradually increase the size of the food as your rat grows. So what we do is every day, not every day, sorry, most days, sort of 5 days a week, the rats will have just one piece of fruit and veg, the same, all have the same food. And then a couple of days a week we'll prepare a bowl of food, and we'll make sure that everybody's favourite food is in there, and then we'll just put the bowl into the cage and we'll just watch them diving in and getting their favourite fruit and vegetables. And then we'll take the bowl away when everyone's had a couple of pieces of fruit. So we'll cut them all into small, like 1 centimetre pieces, so they can go back and have a second. But we'll take it away so they don't have too much and get an upset tummy. So there's some foods that you can feed safely, providing you cook them, is artichoke, onions, potatoes, sweet potatoes, beans, cabbage, Brussels, pumpkin, squash, all meats, all fish, and all eggs. Doubly make sure they're cooked thoroughly. Bread can be toasted or baked in the oven as a crouton. All nuts, whether they're tree nuts or ground nuts, should be roasted. Rice and couscous should always be cooked thoroughly. And remember, with rice and especially, bacteria grows very rapidly, so never reheat it. In fact, with the fresh foods, I would never reheat any fresh food that you feed your rats. Remove it after 1 hour of being in the cage, and sort of make sure everything's thoroughly cooked and then cooled before you put it into the rat cage, and stir the food around to make sure there's no hot spots in it. We also cook parsnips, swede and fresh garden peas, although frozen peas are fine for pea fishing. And the other thing we cook is beetroot. But to remember, we don't use the pre-packaged beetroot at all. We'd only give the rats fresh beetroot from the garden that has been cooked. But one thing with beetroot is that it can stain urine pink. So if you've given beetroot and suddenly every rat has pink stained urine, it probably just is the beetroot and not that they've all got a urine infection at the same time. Some foods that you should avoid. Now, some people say you shouldn't give any dairy products, but then a lot of people do give yoghurt to their rats, and rats enjoy yoghurt. We do feed yoghurt, but we only feed bio yoghurt, and the maximum we would give is 1 teaspoon. We give this occasionally as a treat, but we also find it's very useful if you have sick rats and you're giving medicines, for disguising medicines, and will help to boost the immune system. But never more than 1 teaspoonful a day. So if they're having medicine twice a day, they would just have half a teaspoon in the morning and half a teaspoon at night. And often rats who are too sick to eat much will enjoy a little bit of yoghurt. And we also sometimes mix some cold water in with the yoghurt and water it down a bit for rats that are not feeling well enough to eat or drink really. So some other things that you should definitely avoid. Now, mango we have given to our female rats and they loved it, but apparently it has enzymes which are linked to kidney cancer in male rats, and also papaya. So the best would be avoided for male rats, and we don't give papaya to our female rats either. All citrus fruits have a possible cancer link and I think would be too acidic anyway. Avocado, the flesh is okay as long as you remove the flesh that's around the pit, and take the skin away. Don't ever give the skin. With apple and pear, as I mentioned before, don't give the whole apple. You need to remove the core and the pips because they can be toxic. Sunflower seeds, we all probably know about, can cause skin irritation, so try and avoid giving sunflower seeds. If they have the odd one that's in a mix or a treat, they'll be okay, but don't give like a bowl full of sunflower seeds. Something that's really bad for bacteria and mould spores is blue cheese. I can't imagine rats actually liking it, but don't give blue cheese, and also some soft cheeses have bacteria as well. And things like cream cheese cheese spreads are very sticky and horrible, and I class those as a choking hazard, so avoid those as well. Dried corn on the cob, you have to be careful because of mould spores, so if the corn looks dusty and doesn't look right or doesn't smell right, don't give it to your rats. The same with nuts. All nuts should be roasted because raw nuts, whether they're tree nuts or ground nuts, can contain dangerous mould spores and toxins. Fresh tofu that you get from the delicatessen apparently has a very nasty amount of bacteria in the brine, so you definitely mustn't give the fresh, although I'm told that pre-packed tofu is okay. It's not something that I've ever fed myself, so I don't really know much about that. Rhubarb has a chemical that prevents calcium absorption, so it's not recommended. Definitely no fizzy drinks. The only drink your rat needs is water. Artificial colours and preservatives should be avoided, the same as pesticides and chemicals. Any food that's gone off or mouldy. Green potatoes definitely don't feed, they can be dangerous. And avoid giving your rats human junk food like crisps and things. It's not necessary. We do very occasionally give a tiny bit of prawn cracker to our rats, and they do like that, but it's a very, very occasional treat. We would never give it on a daily basis, and we wouldn't give ordinary potato crisps because I think they're too salty and they've got lots of flavours and things that are not good for rats. If you like to bake your own little rat treats, then avoid white flour, sugar and salt, and use wholemeal flour. And things like oats and healthy things in your treats. If you're buying treats for your rats, always check the packaging for the age range, because a lot of treats say not under 3 months. There's many more that say not under 5 months, and there's even some that say must not be fed to animals under 8 months. So just be careful with foods. Yeah, so that's the foods we definitely should avoid and reasons why. Now we come on to choking hazards, and this can be quite controversial because people don't always agree, but this is what we go by, and that is we never feed bread to our rats because it can swell up in the throat. And we don't give white bread either, we only give wholemeal bread. But if you toast the bread, make it nice and crispy, or bake it in the oven with a little bit of olive oil and make some nice croutons, then it can be a tasty little occasional treat for your rats. Bananas, I know lots of people who feed bananas. I believe they are quite serious choking hazard. I'm told that if you mash them up well, they're good for mixing medicine, and that is safer than giving a chunk of banana. Peanut butter people often use for mixing medicines. I actually believe it's one of the worst things to give a sick rat. It's not easily digested, it's sticky, it's cloggy, and imagine if you're not well and someone gave you a big spoonful of peanut butter and told you to eat that with a sore throat or whatever. You wouldn't find it very easy. Or if you felt sick and you can't be sick and someone said, here, have this peanut butter. So just have a little think about what you're feeding them. But definitely it is a choking hazard whether your rat is sick or not sick. Grapes, we've always been told, is a choking hazard. And also, I should have put this on the foods to avoid for another reason. I have read about toxins in grapes, so that is another reason to avoid them. Now, raisins always used to be an acceptable food, and our rats have had raisins, just the odd one, if it's in a seed mix type treat. We don't feed them on their own, although I did say that you can stick one raisin onto the end of a bamboo stick if you have a biting rat, but we wouldn't give a bowl full of raisins or anything. I have never known a rat to have a problem with a raisin, but that doesn't mean to say that rats haven't choked on raisins, so I would be wary of them. Something else to avoid is all human sweets, especially things that are soft and chewy and sticky, like marshmallows and things like that. It's not necessary to feed human treats and sweets and things to rats. If you've never fed them, the rat won't miss them. So just have a little think about what you're doing to your rats as well when you feed them really unhealthy foods. So soya, as I've said before, can be good or it can be bad. With Bo had her problem with the soya affecting her skin and making her all itchy and sore and dry skinned. So if you're feeding a mix of food that has soya in and your rat is suddenly getting very dry itchy skin, try cutting the soya and see what happens. Chocolate, if you feel the need to give your rat chocolate, a tiny piece of dark chocolate is all that is recommended, because chocolate, especially milk chocolate, white chocolate, is a very high calorie sugar and fat. Some people believe that a tiny bit of dark chocolate helps respiratory conditions. Well, I'm not entirely convinced by that, and we don't feed chocolate. We do give chocolate type treats, which are rat treats, which are like the little yoghurt drops. But we don't feed them very often. Things like human food supplements can also be very high in protein, so avoid those. And as for baby food, we don't use them. Some people swear by them, but our rats don't like them. So I think that's the main things that I can tell you about, and I hope I haven't missed anything out.